my shit.
Hey Jammers, Jones here, back with another video, and welcome to the first installment of my Animal Jam audiobook series. These will be chapters of books that I have written that you can listen to while you're working, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. The Beacon, an Animal Jam story. Chapter 1. Rain. Rain is what woke Liza up from her slumber today, pattering down her window in silver streaks and occasionally leaking through her tiled roof to drip onto her face. The panda alpha groaned in frustration, sliding out of her nest of blankets to get a few pots and pans to help catch the drips. She sighed as she looked out the foggy window glass. Outside her temple of a house, the sprawling bamboo gardens and tall foggy mountains were blanketed in sheets of rain, falling heavy and cold in the morning air. "I knew I should have made Graham come fix the roof yesterday," Liza said. "If only he wasn't so busy building all those new gadgets all the time." Normally, Liza would send a carrier pigeon with a note to summon the monkey alpha, but with the weather today, she knew the small bird wouldn't make it 10 feet in the air. She was going to have to resort to other means of communication. Liza padded down the empty tile halls of her home until she came to a little round table in a room made of glass. From here, she could see all the surrounding mountains, not to mention a view of Jama Township in the distance. But it wasn't the view that interested her today. A large crystal bowl sat on the table, filled with still water that smelled faintly of roses. It was a scrying bowl, used to look into different places around Jama. With a wave of her hand and the whisper of a few magic words, a scene appeared on the surface of the water. It was a cottage made of haphazardly nailed boards and bits of metal in the middle of the thick rainforest jungle. To some, it might look like a rundown treehouse, but Liza knew that this was Graham's home. "Graham," she called, and got no response. "Graham!" she said, louder this time. The front door of the cottage burst open, and the head of a howler monkey poked out, looking wildly around. Graham finally spotted his scrying bowl and hurried over to it, his wild hair trailing in the muggy breeze. "Oh, hey, Liza. Sorry, I forgot I left my bowl out here," the monkey admitted sheepishly. His face was slightly charred around his goggles, almost like he'd been in an explosion recently. "I figured as much," laughed Liza. "You'd forget your head if it wasn't attached to your neck. Hey, you haven't been working on your new steam-powered boom seeds lately, have you?" Graham spluttered indignantly. What? No. You told me not to work on those things because they explode. I totally haven't been working on them." Liza raised an eyebrow. "You're awfully singed to have not been working on them, Graham." The monkey raised his hands in defeat. "You got me. I've been tinkering with them. I can't resist a problem that needs to be solved. But enough about me. What do you need? I know this isn't a friendly call. You're normally still asleep at this hour." Back in her house, Liza placed both her hands on her table, speaking down into the bowl tiredly as she watched the rain fall. She looked exhausted. "Yes, I know, but the roof was leaking and it woke me up." Graham groaned, remembering he promised to come patch the roof up but never did. "I'll tell you what, Liza," he said, tapping his finger against his chin pensively. "I've been working on a propeller hot air balloon for the past month. Coming and visiting you will be the perfect opportunity to test it out." Liza furrowed her brow. "Graham, the storm is getting really bad over here. Are you sure?" "Don't worry about it," the monkey replied, already walking back into his house. "I'm sure everything will be fine. See you this evening." Liza moved to argue with him, but the image was already starting to fade back to smooth water as Graham ended the transmission. She sighed. As much as she needed her roof fixed, it wasn't important enough to have Graham go on such a risky endeavor. She knew for him it was mostly an excuse to try out his brand new gadgets, but that's what she was afraid of. Graham was smart, but his prototype inventions weren't always the most stable. Running a paw down her face in exasperation, she shuffled off to make bamboo shoot udon and some oolong tea. She wasn't supposed to be up at this hour anyway. Back in the jungle, Graham was quickly swinging from tree to tree, a large backpack strapped to his back. He had grabbed some essential tools and snacks from his house before heading out towards the airfield he built in the forest clearing by a lovely waterfall. In his airfield were all his prized inventions, like a solar-powered mini-plane, a bike-pedal helicopter, and most recently, his self-propelled hot air balloon. Graham dropped down from the last tree and landed on his front knuckles, taking off in a four-legged run. His pack jingled with all the gadgets he always had on hand. Around him, parrots chirped and exotic blossoms bloomed in the hot morning sun. Eventually, the thick grass and vines underneath his feet gave way to the flat rock of the airfield, always slightly damp with the spray from the waterfall nearby. There it was, right next to a large twisted tree, his beautiful hot air balloon. With deft fingers, the Alpha clambered into the basket and quickly lit the flame that would heat and lift the contraption. While he waited for the giant balloon to fill, he untied all the ropes from the stakes on the ground and double-checked all the cords that would help him steer. He didn't want to lose control of his balloon a few thousand feet up in the air. Finally, it was time to go, and he pulled the last rope and went drifting slowly into the hot rainforest air. The water flung off by the falls nearby cast little sparkling rainbows around him and onto the canopy of trees below. A cool breeze picked up, and Graham pulled the rope to his left, readjusting his flight. If he stayed on course, he should pass over most of the lands of Jama and reach Liza's beautiful temple by sundown, just in time for dinner. Graham watched a mountain loom overhead. It was the tallest one within 100 miles, sitting just on the edge of the rainforest. Atop this mountain was an enormous stone fortress, painted in reds and golds, with beautiful crimson flags and banners waving in the high-up wind. It was Sir Gilbert's mansion. Graham's balloon was gaining height very slowly, and he passed right over the mansion by barely scraping a rooftop, much to Gilbert's shocked expression in the window nearby. Graham couldn't help but laugh looking at the tiger's face as he cracked open the window, shouting demands about what Graham thought he was doing and how close he could have come to knocking over a flag. The general's yells of grumpy dismay soon faded into the distance as Graham rose up and up and up, clearing the low clouds and holding a steady altitude. The cool air streamed by as he left the sunny climate of the jungle, heading closer and closer to the dark clouds of the mountain range in the distance. It was exactly 7:55 at night when Graham crashed. He thought that his balloon was strong enough to withstand the gales of the storm. But as the sun set, the cold wind whipped up even more fiercely, buffeting his machine with icy hands as sheets of sleet tore at the delicate balloon. The monkey was a frantic blur of pulling strings and twisting dials as he tried to navigate through the sharp, craggy peaks of the mountain in the storm. But there was something that made him pause. A strange green light, dimmed and diminished by the sheets of rain, lighting up the stone of a nearby peak. And just underneath the howling winds of the storm, he could hear it. A strange ringing, repeating again and again. It was this strange light and this strange noise that distracted Graham. He didn't see the large piece of rock jutting out, didn't see the way it tore into the balloon like hungry teeth. All Graham saw was his world tilted upside down as he went careening into the side of the mountain, then tumbling into the dark bamboo forest below, the sound of the storm all around him. A few miles away, Liza stood in front of her large dining room window, watching the rain and waiting anxiously for her friend. Thank you for listening to the first chapter of my new series. If you want to hear more chapters, be sure to tell me in the comments down below. And if you want to see more content like this, hey, why not subscribe? As always, jammers, stay safe and jam on. Jones out.